Today, let's sew a Christmas tree bookmark that can also be an ornament. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are making these little Christmas tree bookmarks. Now, what's really fun is there's going to be a full Etsy pattern available that you can get, and it has multiple different options. So, option A, the really beginner friendly triangle looking one on the left hand side, all the way to option B, which has a little bit more detail. No matter which option you go with, you're going to be just wanting some nice cotton fabric. So, there's going to be two pattern pieces that come with the pattern, one for that option A, which is the easier one, and then option B, which is the more advanced. Besides cotton fabric, you're also going to want some lightweight to medium fusible interfacing, and then you're also going to want some ribbon. For the ribbon, you probably want it to be around 3/8 of an inch width, but for the more advanced pattern, you can also add little ribbon decorations along the tree, so you can see how I did those loops there. And with that, I'd highly recommend using an 1/8 of an inch ribbon so that it's a little bit thinner and just looks nicer overall. Now to get started with the pattern, first we're going to cut out our pattern pieces, so no matter which option you're doing, A or B, you're going to want two pieces of fabric cut out from that pattern piece. Now each pattern piece also has little notches for marks. When you get yours, they're going to actually be at the bottom of the pattern like I'm doing here. I was using an older pattern piece when I filmed this, but either way, you're going to have two pieces of fabric, two pieces of interfacing, and then of course you'll have two pieces of ribbon, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. If you're doing option B, you're going to do the exact same thing, two pieces of fabric and two pieces of interfacing. Now the first step is to apply our interfacing. So like I said, I used fusible interfacing for this, so it's going to have like a bumpy side, and you're going to want to lay the bumpy side of the interfacing on the wrong side of your fabric. And then I'm just going to be using my iron to press that on, and this is the same for option A or option B. Once you have that done for both pieces, you can then bring them over to your workstation. And now I'm going to switch to option B really fast in case you want to add some of this little extra decoration. So I'm going to take one piece of the fabric with the right side up, and then I'm going to be using tracing paper. So you can get this off Amazon. I'll include a link below if you're interested. Just lay this between your pattern piece and the fabric, and then using a tracing wheel, I'm just going to trace over those lines. And what this is going to do is you're going to see very, very lightly some little lines showing where I just kind of traced over, and that's just where we're going to be laying our ribbon down. So using that 1/8 of an inch wide ribbon, so very narrow, I'm just going to be pinning this in place across the front of this piece of fabric. Again, this is entirely optional. You do not have to do this. It's more if you just want to add a little decorative touch. This is how I went about doing it because the ribbon is so thin, you can almost kind of curve it as well. And then I just do this all the way up the tree, cutting little pieces. So this is around 12 inches of ribbon overall. And then I just laid it out so that it would lay nicely across those lines we traced. So this is sort of what it looks like. And then I'm just going to be taking a straight stitch through that ribbon to attach it on. So not doing anything fancy, it's literally just on my straight stitch setting on my sewing machine. And I'm just going to be sewing all the way through this line by line of the ribbon. So this is just going to give us a little bit more of a decorative feel as we go through. Now with that done, options A and B sort of come back together again. So what it's time for us to do now is add those little tassels or the hanger at the top of the bookmark. So I have two pieces of ribbon here. So this is the 3/8 inch wide. That is around 9 inches each. You could make them shorter if you want. And I'm just going to pin them to the very top, so the right side of the fabric, and then just pinning them in place at the top like that. And if you were doing option A, same thing. I use slightly thinner ribbon here. It doesn't necessarily matter. You can use that thinner ribbon or thicker. And then we're just going to take a seam directly across, sort of just to hold this in place as we go through the process of our pattern. So it's going to look the same for option A or for option B. So now we're going to go with option A for a second. What I'm going to do is fold these ribbons up on that one side, so you can see here, and then I'm going to place the second piece of fabric over top, so right sides together, matching like this, and then I'm going to pin that into place all the way around. Now one item to note is at the bottom you're going to have those two notches. You want those to be matching up, and that's going to be telling us where we're starting and stopping our seam. So I'm going to put two pins there on either notch. This just helps me know, especially when I'm sewing, like where I need to start and where I need to stop. But again, you could just denote that in any way so you know that that's where you're starting and then one's where you're stopping. And then I'm just going to pin this the rest of the way up, making sure everything's lined up nicely. And then what we're going to be doing is starting on that one side, sewing all the way up, down, and then sewing there, leaving a gap. And the exact same process if you are making option B instead, the more sort of advanced one. You're just going to be kind of adding your ribbon to the middle, making sure it's not on either edge, and then pinning this all up, being sure that you have that mark at the bottom showing you where to start and stop. There's just more little edges that you have to sew through for this version. Now for this, we're going to be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and as you can see, there's lots of little points, and especially if you're new to sewing, it may be hard to know where to start and stop. So I would highly recommend, if you have a clear ruler, you could just go through and mark out where your seam allowance is going to be. So I'm using pink chalk as an example, and I'm just going to be marking this so that I can see where I would be starting and stopping, just to make it a little easier for myself. And you could do the exact same thing on option B if you wanted to have a little bit more comfort as you went through this. But with all of that done, I can now start sewing. So I'm just going to begin the process wherever those first 2 pins were. Take my seam. When I get to the edge, I am then going to rotate my fabric and pivot it, and then continue on my way up. So all I'm doing with that pivoting is when I stop, I leave the needle in the fabric, and then I turn my fabric and then put the presser foot back down and then continue on. So it just makes it a little easier so that we can have one continuous stitch. So for option A here as the example, I'm going to put the needle down, start sewing. When I get to that corner, I'm going to put the needle back in, lift the presser foot up, turn my fabric, and then continue on my way with the presser foot back down. So just repeating this the entire time. So here's what option A looks like when you're done. So now we need to clean this up to make it a little easier to turn. So I'm just going to clip off the corners a little bit, so I'm not cutting into the seam by any means, and then just cutting some of that extra fabric, and then I'm just going to turn this right side out. So there should be an opening at the bottom that we left, and then very carefully push my fabric through. You may start to see the ribbons as well, which is a good sign, so you could gently pull those and that'll get you that point at the top, and then you can just push out both of the points on either side for option A. If you start to run into any issues, you can always use like a pen or a paintbrush, the pointy end, or a chopstick, and that can help you kind of push those edges out. And then you will see that with that little gap, you can just fold the fabric in on itself, and it should lay very nicely. So that's an example for option A, and then we're going to do the exact same thing for option B. So for this one, we're going to be going through, trimming off any of those edges just so that we kind of clip those points. And then for where the directionality changes, so those little inward points, I'm just going to be clipping this. So clipping as close as I can to that little seam at that point, and then making it so that there's a little flexibility in the fabric itself. This is going to allow it not to bunch up when it comes time to turning this right side out. Then I'll pause here just so you can kind of see what it looks like a little bit cleaned up. And then same process, just going to be turning this one right side out as well. So through that little opening, very carefully pushing the fabric, and then at some point you should come across your ribbon. You could pin it if you wanted to, then just very carefully take that pin out. But here is what my bookmark looks like. So again, you can use those same techniques of the paintbrush or chopstick to help push those little points out. Then you're going to press your bookmarks. And for this, at that one edge that we need to sew close, I'm just going to pin that up and then top stitch all the way around. Now for option B, I'm going to put the ribbon side down if you have that side, and I'm just going to press the fabric out again. And very similarly, use my pins to just pin up that gap. And then I'm going to top stitch all the way around this Christmas tree, just to give that one final touch. Now for the top stitching, I'm going to increase the stitch length ever so slightly to about 3.0. Just gives it a little bit of a more professional feel, I think, and then begin my way top stitching through. When I get to a point, I'm going to pivot my fabric again, and then I'm just going to put the presser foot down and continue sewing. What you might see is that you're actually not able to sew, like the machine gets stuck. When this happens, I like to put a ruler or a piece of cardboard behind the presser foot to help level it out, and then I'm able to keep going on my way. When I get to the next point, I'm going to pivot, do the exact same process, and then I can do this all the way through. Then for option A, very similarly, I'm just going to be going through. Anytime I get stuck or the presser foot seems to just be unlevel, I can use that ruler or cardboard technique. So here are what the two bookmarks look like. We have our option A, which is more basic but still cute, and then option B, which is a little bit more intricate and you could add more decor and decoration. Then you could always tie these if you would like to make it be more of an ornament. If you're just using them as is, you can trim them to whatever length you would like. And then of course, you could just skip the ribbon altogether and just have the Christmas tree shape itself. So I absolutely love these. I thought they were so fun. Again, there is a full pattern available in my Etsy store, and I'll include the link below. But just so you can see what these kind of look like hanging on a tree, this is what it would be for option A, and then for option B. I think both look really fun, and if you made multiple of them, it could look really cute as well. It's just kind of like background ornaments. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know which option's your favorite. Do you like option A or B? Thanks for watching.